Welcome to C Files, folks. Thanks for joining me. Now for the fun time of reading. And I am in a book called The Battle for Christmas, A Cultural History of America's Most Cherished Holiday by Stefan Nissenbaum. I started this book before Christmas of 2025. I'm now in January of 2026 and still working my way through this book. We've made a lot of progress. We're on page 189. And we're in what chapter is this? Of course, this is chapter 5, and there's only 7 chapters. So we're making our way. But these are long chapters, these last ones. Um, and this reading will be Catherine Sedgwick's Christmas Tree. This chapter is Under the Christmas Tree, A Battle of Generations. All right, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let me bring this down. There we go. Catherine Sedgwick declined to support the abolitionist ideology endorsed by Martin New and the Follins, but she continued to count them among her closest friends. And during the same Christmas season in which Martineau witnessed the Follins Christmas tree, Sedgwick published a story of her own, written earlier that year, in which a Christmas tree played a small but distinct part. The story was titled New Year's Day. Like the Fallen's Christmas tree, Catherine Sedgwick's fictional tree was set up for the New Year's Day rather than Christmas itself. In as much as Montanou's account of the Fallens was not published for another 2 years, it was actually Sedgwick's story that has the honor of introducing this ritual into American literature. Sedgwick's fictional account resembled Mettenou's report, except that here the family that performs the ritual was not German, but of old Yankee stock. Yankees living in New York City, as Catherine Sedgwick herself was doing, but this fictional tree was set up at the behest of a German immigrant. The young heroine's maidservant, Madeline, the heroine herself, has been planning to give Christmas presents to each of her younger siblings, as well as to her father, and the maidservant has persuaded her young mistress to arrange the gifts after the fashion of her fatherland. That this, by hanging them on a tree secretly set up in the rear parlor, a room the children rarely entered. Together, Lizzie and Madeline hang up Lizzie's gifts. Never did Christmas tree bear more multifarious fruit. For St. Nicholas, that most benign of all the saints of the calendar, had through the hands of many a ministering priest and priestesses showered his gifts. The sturdiest branch drooped with its burden of books, chessmen, puzzles, etc. For Julius, a stripling of 13, I should say. Dolls, birds, beasts, and boxes were hung on the lesser limbs. A regiment of soldiers had alighted on one bough, and Noah's ark was anchored to another, and to all the slender branches were attached cherries, plums, strawberries, and peaches, as tempting and at least as sweet as the fruits of paradise. As it turns out, the Christmas tree plays only a small role in this story, and the maidservant Madeline does not make any further appearances. As far as I can tell, and I have carefully read the family's correspondence during these years, there was no German maid servant in Catherine Sedgwick's house and no Christmas tree. It is possible, of course, that Sedgwick learned of the tree through a neighbor's maidservant. What is far more likely is that she learned about it from the Folans themselves. But there was much else in Sedgwick's short story that clearly was based on her immediate experience. In order to understand the story, and so to understand the meaning that Christmas trees bore at the moment of their introduction into American literature, it is necessary to make still another visit to Sedgwick's New York household during the Christmas season. Catherine Sedgwick was in the habit of spending her winters in the New York home of her brother, Robert Sedgwick, and his wife, Elizabeth Ellery Sedgwick. This house was a fashionable place, perhaps too much so for Catherine's more understated taste. Elizabeth Ellery Sedgwick cared instantly about accumulating both material goods and success in New York's fashionable social circuits, and she had a sense that by lavishing herself with the one, she would help ensure herself the other. Each year, Mrs. Sedgwick proudly reported to her father what she had been given that holiday season, and also the number of visitors who had called upon her household on New Year's Day. One year, she boasted that the total was about 70 gentlemen. In turn, she noted that her husband, Robert, made 63 calls in 5 hours, so you may judge how he walked. Such a schedule meant that each visit took less than 5 minutes, including traveling time. Elizabeth Sedgwick even thought about her children's holiday gifts in the context of the fashionable world, recalling how she had just greeted her 70 callers in the front room of her house. Mrs. Sedgwick proudly noted that the children occupied the back parlor and made a pretty perspective for us as we received our visitors. Nor did she fail to note that several of the children's gifts were very valuable. Out of the sense of noblesse that governed so much of her life, Catherine Sedgwick participated fully in the fashionable ritual of receiving the gentlemen callers. But the visitations wore on her patience. In a private letter written to a favorite young niece, Sedgwick noted that on New Year's Day, 1835, she had greeted between 70 and 80 gentlemen, but she added that neither their names nor their fashionable witticisms, the letter presumably repeated at every stop, were worth passing along. A single example would have to do. Sedgwick confided to her niece one of the callers had chosen to commit cleverly on the beautiful winter weather. The sun had come out on that very day. By comparing it to the seasonal appearance of gift books or literary annuals that were also known, he said, Nature has come out with her annual at best, and as bright as the best of them, the gentleman found it a book of beauty. The following year, Catherine Sedgwick took on author's revenge in the form of a mocking, fictionalized account of that same experience. Her account made up the central section of the short story in which the Christmas tree also figured. In Sedgwick's fictional rendering, the woman who receives the visitors is the tale's teenage heroine, a charming and attractive girl named Lizzie Percival, the oldest child in a New York family of great wealth and prominence, and the character who obviously represents Catherine Sedgwick herself. Lizzie Percival is sweet, caring, and sincere, a young woman who shares Catherine Sedgwick's disdain for artifice. Like the Sedgwicks, the fictional Percival family experienced a busy New Year's Day. Their visitors were innumerable, and a continual stream poured in and poured out, uttering in the process the stereotyped saying of the season. When one of their visitors referred to New Year's ritual as a fine old custom created by old Dutch ancestors, Lizzie secretly thought of him as an interloper who had not a drop of Dutch blood. And when another asked for whiskey punch, Lizzie modestly reminded him that alcohol had been banished from all refined society. Catherine Sedgwick evidently supported the detoxification of New York's visitations. Every one of Lizzie's fictional visitors spoke in stock phrases, and most of them were coarse, materialistic, and competitive. One man boasted that his wife had received fully 200 visitors the previous year. Another openly compared the hospitality he had received at various houses. A third betrayed the confidence of a woman he knew, a relative of Lizzie's, who had declined to receive visitors that day on grounds of ill health, by revealing that the woman was not sick at all. Say to my friends, I'm sick, I'm dead, she had confided. But between ourselves, my dear Lizzie, the draperies to the drawing room curtains are not completed. That's all. The least offensive of the fictional visitors were the ones who merely attempted to be clever. Among these was a young man whose witticisms will already be familiar to us. Echoing almost verbatim Sedgwick's earlier real life report, this young man extolled the weather and said that nature had, last of all the publishers, come out with her annual, and the gentleman had found it a book of beauty. This kind of extended and autobiographical satire provides a literary contrast that sets off the brief but important appearance of the Christmas tree in this story. Set in this new context, its meaning is simple. Catherine Sedgwick's Christmas tree is associated with everything that is absent in the fashionable visitation ritual. It is associated with children, innocents, good-hearted children, and a private space of a purely domestic ritual. In effect, Catherine Sedgwick had turned the tables on the sheriff, discussed in Chapter 3, who had identified with the world of alcohol and male culture and dismissed the world of women and temperance as cold comfort. Here again, Catherine Sedgwick's fictional representation stands in contrast to the Sedgwick's actual experience. In real life, as we have seen, the children of Robert and Elizabeth Sedgwick were playing with their presents in the back parlor at the same time that Catherine and Elizabeth Sedgwick were receiving their fashionable visitors in the front one. In fact, the door between the two rooms remained open an entire time. Elizabeth Sedgwick chose to comment on the children's activities only by noting how they enhanced the charm of the adult ritual. The children occupied the back parlor and made a pretty perspective for us as we received our visitors. But in Catherine Sedgwick's fictionalized account of the same event, the two rituals appear to be taking place in a separate time and space. And it was crucial that they did. The central theme of Sedgwick's story is the contrast between artifice and authenticity. The holiday season functioned as a literary occasion on which it was easy to carve out a divide between the private and the public worlds and to take the pleasures of the former more seriously than the demands of the latter. That is the point of the love story in which Sedgwick's plot is superficially framed, and which is not worth retelling here. And it is the reason Sedgwick chose to set the story at Christmas, a time when, as she saw, the most artificial rituals were juxtaposed with the most authentic ones. Sedgwick's young heroine, Lizzie Percival, may be able to hold her own in repartee with the gentlemen visitors, but it is to the private domestic ritual that her heart belongs. Through the character of Lizzie, Sedgwick manages to establish a core of authenticity in a household that is besieged from without and within by the forces of social convention, whether the stereotyped sayings of the season or the equally stereotyped holiday presents the real life Sedgwick children received. I don't know exactly what those presents were, but the children's mother did report that they were numerous and some of them were very valuable. When Catherine Sedgwick fictionalized this part of her experience, she was more specific. The toys that Lizzie Percival placed on the Christmas tree consisted of things like books, dolls, animals, and a regiment of toy soldiers. At first glance, these two would appear to be commercial toys, toys she has bought, the kind of toys that are available at any number of New York shops. But as the children, Lizzie's younger brothers and sisters, comment on their gifts one by one, it becomes absolutely clear that Lizzie has prepared them all herself. Here's a picture of her. Hope you can see that. Well, come on, let me get a good spot. There you go. And the caption says, Catherine Maria Sedgwick, this picture shows the author as a young woman and suggests something of a charm that helped endear her to a wide circle of acquaintances, courtesy of the Fine Arts Library, Harvard College Library. All right. Consider the children's responses. One of the brothers receives a nice book filled with copies for him to draw after and exclaims pointedly, "How much pains you have taken to do this for me! How much time and trouble you have spent upon it!" A sister receives a beaded bag and makes the same point. "Oh, Sister Lizzie, how I did not know when I split all your beads that you was knitting this bag for me." The dolls that two other siblings received may have been stored bought, but they come dressed in clothing Lizzie has sewn. "Oh, Anne, your doll is dressed just like mine. Sister has even worked their pocket handkerchiefs. Even the toy soldiers have been hand finished. Sister, did you paint these soldiers?" cried Hal. "Kiss me. You are the best sister that ever lived." One of the children speaks of for them all when thanking Lizzie for the hand embroidered apron she has received. She exclaims, "Oh, Papa, does not sister do everything for us?" Finally, we learn that Lizzie has done the same for her father, too. She presents him with a pair of slippers, beautifully wrought by her own hands, together with several pairs of fine woolen hose, which she had knit for him in her intervals of leisure. Sedgwick hammered the point home. They were just such as he liked, just such as he could not buy, just such as nobody but Lizzie could knit, just such as he could not buy. As early as this story, written in the mid 1830s, Catherine Sidgwick was able to make a point of how special it was for Christmas presents to be handmade or even hand finished. More to the point, Sedgwick chose to have all these gifts made by hand in order to reinforce further the point she had already suggested by the German Christmas tree. The true essence of the Christmas gift exchange must be forged outside the fevered crucible of market relations. Handmade gifts, a German maidservant, and a Christmas tree. By employing such literary tactics, Catherine Sedgwick was partially able to resolve the contradiction between market relations and intimate personal ones. But there was one aspect of the contradiction that remained immune to such a literary solution: the tension between the story's message and the medium that carried it. After all, whether or not Catherine Sedgwick actually knew a maidservant like the fictional Madeline, her story conveyed the impression that the tree really was a folk tradition observed by servant girls. But in fact, it was not the German maidservant Madeline who effectively spread the idea of the Christmas tree throughout American culture. It was the Yankee patrician Catherine Sedgwick, popular author and Unitarian daughter of a Massachusetts congressman, who accomplished her. Even more important, Sedgwick did this not by setting up such a tree, but by writing a story about it and publishing that story in a popular gift book read by middle class readers throughout America. A gift book that went on sale just in time for the 1835 holiday season. Remember that the fashionable gentleman visitor, in both Sedgwick's story and her actual experience, had tried to construct a stylish pun by speaking of Mother Nature as if she were the publisher of just such an annual. In fact, the particular volume in which Sedgwick's story appeared, a gift book called The Token, remains notable to literary historians for another reason entirely. It contains the first publication of two important stories by Nathaniel Hawthorne: The Maypole of Merry Mount and The Minister's Black Veil. Literary annuals were hardly produced in the workshops of folk culture. They were a part of the fashionable new commercial world, a world that Catherine Sedgwick was critiquing from within. Sedgwick's readers may unconsciously have assumed that they were learning about Christmas trees directly from the folk character Madeline, and in fact, the path of transmission was nothing other than the latest holiday season commodity, a gift book that had been purchased as a present in a fashionable shop. I'm at 24 minutes. Let's see how long this portion is. Yeah, I can't do it in 6 minutes. So when we come back, we'll pick up on Toward a History of Christmas Trees on page 195. And we're making our way toward the end of this chapter. Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, we got a ways to go. Quite a ways to go. All right. Yeah, 218, page 218 is the end of the chapter. So hope you're enjoying these readings and learning a little bit about the history of Christmas in America and the traditions of it. Um, chapter 6 is going to be really good. Tiny Tim and other charity cases. I'm looking forward to that one. And of course, Tiny Tim was the fictional character in A Christmas Story by Charles Dickens. Remember Mr. Scrooge? Yeah, that's the one. All right. Well, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you. God bless you. I'll see you at the next reading right here on the C Files. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you do, I'll come back with another reading. God bless.